If you're looking for a crispy and delicious snack that pretty much everyone can enjoy, then you're going to want to try these onion pakora. They're lightly spiced, crispy and delicious, and as an extra added bonus, they just happen to be vegan. And I've been playing around with different combinations of ingredients and techniques to give them maximum crunch. They totally give onion ring vibes, but in my opinion are way better. I had an onion ring the other day. It was a wrong number. Sorry about that. That's the last dad joke in this video, I promise. Well, maybe one more. Let's get snacking. So, for one snack-sized serving, you're going to need 1 onion. If you need to make more, you can easily scale the recipe up from there. Red onions are most traditional, but any onion works fine. Mine is brown. So I'm slicing that in half, peeling off the skin, and then slicing it thinly. How thinly? About this thinly. And if your knife skills aren't up to scratch, you can always use a little bit of kitchen magic. Hey presto. Then I'm putting the onions in a bowl and sprinkling over about 3/4 teaspoon of table salt. And once the onions are salted, I'm giving them a really rough massage. What I'm trying to do here is break up the layers of onion, bruise them a little bit, and use the abrasiveness of the salt to rough them up a bit. This will help them to soften and start the process of drawing out the moisture. Once they're salted and massaged, I'm just going to let them sit for 15 to 20 minutes. This will allow the salt to draw some liquid out of the onions via osmosis. And the more liquid you can get out of your onions means the less water you have to add to make the batter, which means less dilution and more onion flavor. And as you can see, after 15 minutes, the onions are looking quite wet and have expressed quite a lot of moisture. I guess you could say that makes them a leek. See what I did there? It's a homophone! Okay, that was the last dad joke, I promise. Now I'll let that sit for 5 more minutes while I knock up a quick and easy sauce. The sauce is totally optional, these things are great on their own. They're even really nice just with a squirt of ketchup. But if you have the time, this simple herby yogurt sauce will just take them to the next level. So here I have a bunch of fresh mint and coriander leaves. And I'm starting by picking off the coriander leaves until I have enough to roughly fill 1/4 cup. Then I'm throwing that into a mortar. If you don't have a mortar and pestle, a food processor will work just fine, and probably be a bit quicker and a bit less effort. I'm then going to go ahead and do the exact same thing with the mint leaves, picking them off until there's roughly 1/4 cup, and throwing them into the mortar with the coriander. And lastly, 1 small clove of garlic. Not too much, we don't want it to be too bitey, but a little bit just adds a subtle pungency that complements the herbs really well. I'll start by bashing the garlic clove. You don't want to get any big chunks of garlic, so I'll smash that first to make sure that it gets ground up nice and fine. Then I'll just keep working on everything, grinding away until I get a coarse paste. This seems to be about as good as I can get it for now, so now I'm going to add a pinch of coarse salt. This will act as an abrasive, and as I work the pestle around, you'll see the herbs break down much quicker into a smooth, wet paste. Then to that, I'm adding roughly 1/4 cup of plain yogurt and mixing until it's all combined. Then finally, I'm just giving that a quick taste to see if it needs any more salt or possibly a squeeze of lemon. But no, it's perfect. And that's the sauce done. Now on to the next ingredients, which are a green chili, which I'm just roughly chopping, and then some herbs. I've got about 4 curry leaves. If you can't find these, you can leave them out. I usually get them fresh from an Indian grocer, but whatever I don't use, I pick, pop them in a plastic Ziploc bag, and keep them in the freezer. It's not quite as good as fresh, but they do store pretty well this way. And I'm also adding some coriander leaves, also known as cilantro. Fresh herbs are a little bit hard to measure by volume, but I'd say that once it's chopped, this will be roughly a tablespoon. And lastly, for the aromatics, I'm grating in around about a teaspoon of ginger. Next, onto the dry ingredients, and I've got 1/4 cup of chickpea flour. This is going to add some wonderful flavour and a little bit of colour. 1/4 cup of plain flour, that's going to puff up slightly and make sure the crispiness stays nice and light. And 1/4 cup of rice flour, that's going to make sure it stays nice and crisp. Now to spice things up, and you can use pretty much any blend of spices you think would taste good, and if you're feeling lazy, you could even get away with just throwing in a bit of curry powder or garam masala. But I'm using 1/2 teaspoon of chili powder, 1/4 teaspoon of ground cumin, and 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric. Then we'll give everything a really good mix and see if we need to add some water. This isn't an exact measurement because it's going to depend on how juicy your onions were and how much liquid came out of them. This is looking a bit too thick and doughy. We want more of a thick batter consistency, so I'm just adding a couple of tablespoons of water at a time until it looks and feels about right. And I think this here is pretty much the texture I'm looking for. Not too doughy, not too runny, somewhere in between. To cook, I'm going to heat up some neutral flavored oil. I'm using a wok, but any large saucepan or pot would do just fine. And I'll put that over a medium-high heat and let it heat up to about 180 degrees Celsius. If you don't have a thermometer like this, you can pop in a wooden skewer or a chopstick, and if the oil starts to bubble, then your temperature should be pretty close to being right. Now there's a little bit of technique involved when dropping them into the oil. You want to pick up a small clump at a time. If you try and go in with too much, they'll be too big and doughy and may not cook through to the center before the outside turns a nice golden brown. And as you carefully lay them into the oil, you want to try and spread them out a bit so that they're not all one round uniform lump. We're not making dumplings, we're making pakora. So we want lots of little straggly bits because they're the bits that'll get really nice and crispy. Keep an eye on them as they cook. The oil temperature will drop a bit after they first go in, but if you can, try and get it up to about 180 again, and then keep a close eye on them to make sure they're not browning too quickly. Once they're looking nice and golden on one side, flip them over and continue cooking them on the other. And again, just keep a nice close eye on them and pull them out when they've turned a nice deep golden brown. When they're done, pull them out and put them on a wire rack or a piece of paper towel to drain away any excess oil. Also, leave a little space between them so they don't steam each other too much, and give them a light sprinkling of salt while they're still hot. This will make sure they're beautifully seasoned and make sure things stay nice and crisp. Then it's completely optional, but I like to sprinkle over some fresh herbs for garnish. This is just a little bit of chopped coriander. And these smell great and they're beautifully golden brown, and just listen to how crispy they are. Ooh yeah, these are gonna be good. I'm just giving them a light dip in the herb and yogurt sauce, and let's give it a try. And they are delightful. They're beautifully light and crisp, savoury, fragrant, with a nice subtle spice profile. And the herb and yogurt sauce adds a beautiful freshness, lifts the flavours, and brings everything together beautifully. Now, let's have a little bit closer listen to that crunch. That is really satisfying. For some other crispy delights, check out this video, and until next time, happy snacking.